About a month ago, as it's been dry, I've had to go around watering everything that usually doesn't need any water. And so I was watering the potted plants in the back around the pool. And there's one that has ferns had grown out of the bottom, and then there's a potted plant on top, and I'm watering it, and out shoots a duck out of the ferns right into the pool. And I was like, whoa, surprise. And then I'm kind of wondering what to do and thinking the duck's just going to, fly away. And it doesn't. And in fact, it seems attached to the spot that I was watering. So I just kind of continued around the yard and minded my own business, and then it went back and disappeared. And it was a female mallard. And so I thought and wondered and mentioned to the kids that we have a duck living in the backyard, and possibly it has laid some eggs. So don't ask me about having a pet anymore, because we've got one. You can name her if you'd like, but she's in the backyard now. And then the next Monday morning, I'd look out there throughout the week and wouldn't see anything. But the next Monday morning, I'm out there doing the same thing, watering, and remembering not to saturate the duck's spot. And in from the sky comes two mallards, the male and the female, and they swoop right into the pool like they own the place. And it was just majestic, just right into the water. And so the female goes to her spot, and the male, it's opposite than the human world. The males are the pretty ones in the duck and the mallard world. And so the male's in his suit, with this tie around his neck, and he's kind of walking around looking at me, and I'm looking at him and trying to, kind of mind my own business. And he hangs around for about 5 minutes, and then he takes off and flies back. There's a lake across the street. Lake Silver is behind the houses across the street. And then the next Monday morning, nothing. And Murray asked me, "Did you, what's the duck story for today?" And I said, I didn't see anything. I'm not really sure. And so then this Monday morning, I got up, took Noah to school, and then Mary Reed gets picked up a little bit later. But I received a text from Mary Reed, and I received this picture here with a bunch of heart and ducky emojis with it. From her room, she heard quacking, a lot of quacking. And so she walked out and discovered this. And so I came back from dropping Noah off, and there they were, and the mother was quacking instructions to them, and they were all swimming, and she was teaching them how to swim. It was marvelous. And she was defensive. If you walked right up to the pool, she'd get in between you, and it kind of seemed like it was distracting the lesson. So I backed off, and I said, I'll go in the front yard. And then and I checked back a couple times and just enjoyed them playing. And between going in the front yard and maybe having lunch, I went back and they were gone. And I had left the gate open, and so I missed the parade, which it must have been a marvelous parade as they went across the street and then into the yards and then into the lake. And we haven't seen them since. So, but that was the miracle of this week. Noah didn't get to see them, but then Noah came back later and discovered their nest. And so discovered broken eggshells and a bunch of feathers, and he was the one that found their nest in there. So spring is, and I hope you've had this yourself over spring. Spring is celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. It is celebrating it. It's in full bloom. Things that were dead come back to life. new life is born. It's celebrating Jesus' triumph of life over death. And the only thing from stopping us from joining in the festive procession is our faith. And my main thought this month or so with the mallard, with the female mallard, is what can I do to help protect and provide? And so I went online and said, well, okay, is there some food I can put out there? And I put some food out there. They didn't touch it. I wondered, now, how are if the baby ducks end up in the pool, how are they going to get out? So, I took kind of a pool toy and had set it up, and so there was a ramp. They didn't use it. I watched the baby ducks could get out just fine. They kind of flapped and tried to fly and jumped, and they went from the step right up in, all 9 of them, no problem. They could do it without me. And I worried about the occasional cat that gets in the backyard, or even a raccoon or something. And we all know that, it's not all the baby ducklings make it. And so I was kind of in more of that frame of mind. I was lacking faith during this time in trying to take control and do what I can do to control the situation. Meanwhile, that Mama Mallard was acting in faith. She was all in. She just went for it. Here's a good spot. I'm going to lay the eggs. I'm going to do my thing. There's some weird guy walking around with a water thing, but I'm going to ignore him, and I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to be part of what's going on in the springtime, part of creation. She was all in with her faith, and it was her faith that brought the marvelous miracle to our family this week. Now, Mark's resurrection account has, we know, at least one mama, but 3 women are what he focuses on. 3 women of faith in his resurrection telling. Now, I should tell you, and you might have noticed during the reading, that we stopped at verse 8 because the preponderance of the evidence shows that anything beyond verse 8 that's in your Bible in Mark has been added later. It was added later by the church. And with good reason, because it seems like an abrupt ending to say, and the women were terrified and they went away and didn't say anything to anyone. The end. So it does beg for a bit of a better ending, and I don't disagree with that. But this year we're listening to Mark. And you also, I noticed when I looked at these, there's actually 2 different alternate endings that the early church came up with. And the longer one reads like a conglomerate of little pieces of John and Matthew and Luke, and then some weird thing about snakes and stuff that's added in there. And it's like, that's not Mark. Maybe Mark should have come up with a better ending. But this year what we're doing is we're appreciating Mark. And this is the way Mark determined to end. It kind of has this end like, now what? Which kind of puts the emphasis back on us. Okay, this has happened. I'm not going to just resolve it for you. Now it's on you. And remember, Mark was more, at the time, it was more verbally spoken and told as a story more than it was read. So he wrote it with that in mind. So it would be quite an ending to leave it that way. And then also to focus on Mark is to focus on what is there from Mark. And what Mark emphasizes is the faith of these 3 women. He doesn't talk about the disciples. So that's what we want to do. We want to look at the faith of these 3 women. Instead of I am Joseph, it's I am the women today. Guys, do the best that you can do. We're going there. And here's what Mark tells us about them. We've got Mary Magdalene. We've got Mary, the mother of James. James, the smaller, lesser, younger. It's a Mikros. James the Mikros. You know that word in Greek. And it means there's 2 James of the 12. There's 2 disciples named James. One was James and John, the sons of thunder, the sons of Zebedee. And we know about them. They were fishing, and Jesus called them. But this other James, we don't have the backstory. And so the way Mark describes it is, this is the mother of James the lesser, James the younger, or the ones that isn't mentioned as much. But there she was, and her name was Mary. And then there was Salome. So those are the three women. They had been, this is all from Mark and what he's decided to tell us about them. They had all been following Jesus and serving him. They were at the cross, watching from a distance, which not a lot of the Galileans seemed to be. They stayed there even after Jesus died. He died on the cross, and they stayed right there, watching. They saw Joseph of Arimathea take the body down. They followed him. Now, Joseph of Arimathea seems like a nice guy in our view, but to them, Joseph of Arimathea was one of the council members of the Sanhedrin, one of the insider Jerusalemites. That's a word I just made up. People from Jerusalem. And he was an intimidating man. This was the council that just had put Jesus to death. And here's a member of that council. They could tell, surely, he was a wealthy, powerful man. He's a member of this council, and they see, and he's taking Jesus' body down. So that was intimidating to them. In their faith, though, they followed, probably from a distance, watching where Joseph placed Jesus' body. They watched Joseph roll the stone over the entrance to the tomb. And then, since Jesus died at 3 o'clock that afternoon, that's the moment he died, and sunset of that day, Sabbath begins. So they're watching all this. Well, it had to take some time. Joseph had to go to Pilate, get permission, get the body, take it to the tomb. And so they had to be back where they were supposed to be by sunset for Sabbath. And they honored that Sabbath. They stayed. They rested. But that Sabbath is then over the following sunset. And what Mark tells us is, as soon as the sun set, they went into the market and bought spices for Jesus' body. Then, so it's nighttime. They can't see anything. They can't go out to the tomb. So the next morning they wake up before dawn, and as soon as there's enough light to see, they're off. And they're off to the tomb. And then they're wondering along the way, how are we going to roll that stone away from the entrance of the tomb? And they probably could have done what Joseph did, which would be roll the stone into the entrance, which is kind of, you think, down. It would be much harder to roll it up and out. So that's why it's not that he was Mr. Macho and they were weaklings. It was just that reality there that they were worried about. And so what they found was that the stone was rolled away. And they had to be wondering, oh no, look what's happened. The body's been taken. We weren't watching. They must have felt a sense of failure. Certainly wondering what is going on. It's not there. And then they entered the tomb, which for this claustrophobic would take a lot of faith. Caleb's here. We went to Guatemala together several times, and they're like, we're going to a cave today. And I'm like, y'all are going to a cave today. I will be on the top with the air and the blue sky, and you guys can do whatever you want. But we are not going into a cave today. These women were serving by faith. They were bold and they were faithful. They served Jesus in his life. They were ready to serve him in his death. And the ending of Mark saying these women were bewildered and afraid, if we really look at what Mark is telling us about these women, we have to assume that was temporary. Here's these strong women that have served Jesus this whole time, since the time he was in Galilee, brave enough to stand at the cross and follow Joseph of Arimathea, faithful enough to do all these things as soon as they possibly could. These women weren't going to stay afraid for long. And of course, we do know that from the other Gospels that they then did tell the other disciples. See, our faith matters. In Mark 6, when Jesus was in his hometown, it says that he was not able to do many miracles there. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. As in, because of their lack of faith, they didn't get the miracles. It was a result of their faith. It wasn't Jesus' ability. You know, so there's Nazareth. He was only able, it says, he laid his hands on a few people who were sick, who had colds. Okay, that's what that word means. It's just people who were sick, and he healed them. That was it. In other cities, he was healing lepers. People that were born blind were given sight. People that couldn't walk anymore were made to walk. He was doing amazing, miraculous things in other cities. But in the city that he was raised in, because of their lack of faith, they didn't get those miracles. See, our faith matters. That's the message, isn't it, for Mark to read that? Our faith matters. When we act and serve in faith, we see miracles. When we go for it, like these ladies, like the mallard mama duck, that's when the miracles come. You know, the ducks were a gift from God. I didn't produce the ducks. I didn't do this for my family. My protection and provision of the ducks was ignored. They didn't eat any of my food, and they didn't use my little ramp, okay? It had nothing to do with me, but I was there. You know, I was there. I was faithfully serving in the garden on the Monday mornings, and so that because of that, I was able to see and notice the miracle of what was going on. There's plenty of Monday mornings, let me tell you, that in my mind saying, you know, let's take this Monday morning off. Nobody will know. You know, let's go inside, let's go back to bed, let's do something else. And I have to tell myself, get your tail out there and get to work in the garden, like what you do. And the garden rewards that. It does. So serving faithfully, to be faithful and to serve, that's the people who see the miracles. Where is God calling you to serve faithfully? Is there somewhere new He's calling you to serve faithfully? Is there somewhere where you've been serving faithfully, He's calling you to continue to serve faithfully? Because it is the ones who serve in faith who see the miracles. The miracles are God's work, but it's the faithful servants that get to see them, enjoy them, and through God's grace even take part in them. That was certainly true for the women. This is Mark 16:5-8. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Now let's spend a couple minutes in the moment of that miracle, of these faithful servants discovering the greatest miracle that our planet has ever known, and the salvation of it, the triumph over death. Take a couple minutes, and God may put a word into your heart which you can then share. This is our altar piece here. And back in the lobby, there will be one of these squares ready for you to write in your word as we fill it up throughout the year. So take a moment and spend a little time pondering the miracle.